Hello, friends. Oh, look, it's Mildred. How you been, honey? Will you play? You want to play? Oh, she's so cute. She really is. Here, let me give her a toy. Let's see. Here I am, Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com. Right? Last time I checked. Ready? Toy. Ready? Go. There. She plays fetch. It's terrific. Here we are doing music that I can't live without, that you can't live without, that we all can't live without. And today we're talking about 16 chamber works for 4 or more players that I couldn't live without, but not string quartets. I know, how do you do some of these categories? I mean, I could do it quintets, sextets, septets, schleptets, whatever, but the truth is, there aren't enough in some of these categories to actually do a big chunk of them. And then it wouldn't be interesting because we'd all be talking about the same 3 pieces of music. You know, I mean, with octets, right? You've got like, I don't know, 3 or 4, or 5 of them maybe. You know, it's no fun. So this way, by doing 4 or more players, and there's going to be another talk, by the way, of duos and trios, so don't worry. But doing 4 or more players, but not string quartets, we actually have an opportunity to create a wonderful jumble, a great mix of pieces for different numbered forces and mixed ensembles. And it leaves enough space so that you can give me your list as well and fill in the blanks for the things I've left out, because a lot of things are going to get left out, even with 16 pieces, when you're dealing with everything 4 or more. But it's got to be a chamber work. And that does not include, by the way, aside from string quartets, things like chamber symphonies for 22 players or things like that. That's orchestral, I think. That's, you know, you may disagree, but I think so. I think once you get past, 12, 13, 14 players, really 12 or 13 players, you are in the orchestral realm. So that's just me. So here they are. You ready? Mozart's Piano Quintet for piano and winds. Oh, what a brilliant work that is. It's just total screaming, flaming, insane genius. My God, it's great. Beethoven wrote one in imitation of Mozart's, and it's not as good as the original, as so often happens with the sequel. The Mozart Piano and Wind Quintet is something really, really special because Mozart was such an amazing writer for wind ensembles. And then you put a piano with it, and hilarity ensues. Let's put it that way. It's just delicious. Then, like I said, the Mendelssohn Octet. What are you going to do with octets? I mean, seriously, you've got Mendelssohn, you got Schubert, you got Stravinsky. There's Hindemith wrote an octet. But everyone can live without that. You just wind up with masterpiece octets, right? It can't really be its own category. So the Mendelssohn Octet is the octet. It's for double string quartet. It is unbelievable. Totally fabulously thrilling. The cool thing about the Mendelssohn Octet is that it is a genuine octet. It's not like Spohr, who wrote double quartets, which some of you might want to mention, where you have 2 complete string quartets. No, Mendelssohn uses every possible combination of his 8 players all the time. It's just, and he was 18 when he wrote it, and it just makes you depressed to be alive, frankly. It's an incredible, joyful work that you should really get to know. Then we've got the Beethoven Septet in E-flat major. This was the piece that Beethoven learned to hate because it was his most popular work in his lifetime. Everybody loved the Septet, and they didn't care for Beethoven's bigger, more serious, more profound works, which drove him crazy, absolutely crazy. But it's a terrific piece. It's a serenade-like work. It's got extra movements, and it's juicy and delicious, and it's, oh, yes. You should definitely hear the Beethoven Septet. If you don't know it, you owe it to yourself to hear it. And it was the inspiration, I think, the nominal inspiration for Berwald's Grand Septet in B-flat major. A gorgeous chamber work. Fantastic. Berwald had a very long life. He's not that well known, but he wrote some incredible music and wonderful chamber music that was quite experimental as he got older. And he invented tone poems before Liszt wrote tone poems, for example. Some really, really interesting stuff. But he was in Vienna and he knew Beethoven. And, at that period in the 1810s and 20s, Berwald was hanging out there. Later, he wound up in Berlin and Sweden. He was Swedish. and he lived into what, about the 1860s or something like that. But the Septet is one of his early works, and it's as delightful as Beethoven's. It's a wonderful piece. Nobody gives it any attention, of course, because most people don't pay any attention to Berwald, but it deserves to be heard regularly. Usually it's coupled with octets or septets by other people. It's not so hard to find. The Dvořák Piano Quintet No. 2. Oh, it's a tough choice between Dvořák's piano quartets and quintets, but the Quintet No. 2, just, oh God, it's so beautiful. It's just so beautiful. I mean, what are you going to say? It just has tunes for ages, acres of gorgeous melody, brilliantly written, fun to play, fun to hear. Oh, it's just fun to turn pages for the pianist, which I've done. I was a volunteer page turner, because that way I got to hear all this stuff live. I'd say, oh, I'll turn pages, and so it was really, really fun. But that's one of the great chamber works for strings and piano, without a doubt. Schubert, the Trout Quintet. Oh, what a delightful piece that is. It uses the tune from the song Dvořák, whatever you call it, the trout, the little fishy, trouty thing, and as a source of theme and variations in one of its movements. It's a serenade, essentially, because it has a double bass and a piano and strings, and, well, it's been recorded a bazillion times, and wonderfully, as often as not, it's kind of unkillable, and it just exudes good spirits, high spirits. It's a feel-good piece. When it's over, you just believe that all's right with the world, and life is terrific, and then you take a look around and you put it on again to recapture the feeling. That's how you do it. Chausson, the concert for violin, piano, and string quartet. This is a very unique piece of writing. It's a violin concerto, essentially, but the accompaniment is piano and string quartet. And really, Chausson wrote very few large works because he died young. He was killed in a bicycling accident. What a way to go. But there's the symphony, and, well, this. There's other chamber works too, but there's not a lot. And so this piece doesn't get a tremendous amount of play because it's just so unusual. And you have to have a virtuoso violinist and then a pianist and a string quartet. So it doesn't come together all that often, but boy, when it does, it's one of the great romantic works for violin and ensemble. And very, very few people know it. It's definitely worth seeking out. If you haven't heard it, you owe it to yourself. Poulenc, the Sextuor for piano and winds, his sextet for piano and winds. Poulenc loved wind instruments. He didn't like strings. He liked that, what he called that sec quality of woodwinds. He liked their ability to articulate rhythms and that somewhat dry sound, as opposed to the schwimmy, schwarmy, stringy thingy, that kind of annoyed him. And his writing for woodwinds is all stunning. It's like oboe sonata, the clarinet sonata, the flute sonata, the trio, which we may encounter soon in another talk. But the sextet for piano winds is incredible. It's on the one hand zany, it has crazy horn writing and stuff like that. Da 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 do 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 do. It's sort of like, hey, but then it has those wonderful heartfelt melodies. There's nothing like Poulenc. There really isn't, because he can change atmosphere and mood within 2 bars. On the one hand, it could be clown music, then it can be just the most touching thing in the world, then it can be cabaret, then it could be Mozart pops by, swims by. What a great work. It's refreshing. Schoenberg, Pierrot lunaire, which is actually a sextet, sort of, kind of, with a voice, with poetry recitation on top of it. Pierrot lunaire is just one of the 20th century masterpieces that just blows my mind. Yes, it's atonal. Who cares? The poems are so creepy, incredibly creepy, and the music fits them to a T perfectly, wonderfully well. And it's a chamber work, and people, seldom included, I think, in lists of great chamber works, but it belongs there, without a doubt. It's a work of screaming genius, and I just has to be on my short list. Carl Nielsen's Wind Quintet, one of the all-time great wind quintets. There aren't that many. I mean, there is, one we'll be talking about, which is a sextet in a moment. But the Nielsen Wind Quintet is another from a composer who was a string player, which meant he always wrote best for woodwinds. It happens all the time in the world of classical music that violinists do. They understand that the source of great orchestration and color is the wind section. And Nielsen's Wind Quintet is stunning. It's a brilliant, enjoyable, colorful, quirky. I mean, it's one of those pieces that kind of feels like it always existed. It's timeless. You listen to it and you go, oh, wow. It's so well written and conceived for the instruments. It's amazing. Next, Brahms, the Sextet No. 2, is String Sextet No. 2, which I talk about all the time because I'm addicted to it. It just blows my mind. It really does. It's one of the most thematically opulent and beautiful things that Brahms ever wrote, with a profound theme and variations third movement and an incredible finale that has the tune da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 da, and the rhythm underneath it, chung cha chung cha chung cha cha. I don't know. It's another one of those timeless pieces. It feels like you've heard it before, but you don't know where. And the work itself has the most wonderfully fulfilling and satisfying overall shape and structure and emotional range. And gosh, it makes me want to cry. Next, Janáček, Mládi. That's his wind sextet. Youth. It stands for youth because he was like 70 or something when he wrote it, or 74 or 72 or something in the 70s. And he wrote it and decided to call it youth because he wasn't feeling old, and the music doesn't feel old. Oh, what fun it is. The extra orchestra is the extra instrument for the wind quintets. Wind quintets are usually, clarinet, oboe, bassoon, flute, and horn, right? The winds plus a horn. Your basic 4 woodwinds plus a horn. But Janáček adds a bass clarinet, which gives the whole thing a little extra oomph on the bottom. A nice, wonderful, sort of growly quality that gosh, it's just totally amazing. William Walton, Facade. This is another vocal work, but in its original form, it's a sextet. It's for an interesting bunch of instruments. It's got like a trumpet and a saxophone and percussion and things like winds and percussion and things. And I don't know, maybe there's a violin in there. And the poetry is by Edith Sitwell, and it's quite strange and funny. And the settings are absolutely adorable and brilliant. And Walton worked with the piece his whole life. I mean, there was the original bunch of them, and then he added some, and there was a second version, there was a sequel. Then he made an orchestral suite where he beefed up the orchestration. But the original Facade for voice and chamber ensemble is one of the 20th century classics. And I think it belongs in any short list of wonderful chamber works for 4 or more players. I just adore the thing, and poetry is great. It's one of the few works for a reciter with spoken word that I can tolerate. I usually hate spoken word in music. It usually drives me crazy, but this as a conception is so beautifully put together. So yeah, Facade. And then Saint-Saëns, his septet for the very interesting ensemble of trumpet, 2 violins, viola, cello, double bass, and piano. Not too many people know this work. I remember when I first heard it, I guess it was about 40 years ago now. I knew Saint-Saëns for the organ symphony and the Carnival of the Animals, and sometimes the Second Piano Concerto. I mean, that was Saint-Saëns, and his chamber music was a complete cipher. I mean, I didn't listen to any of it, and then I got a disc that had the Carnival of the Animals. It was on EMI, and it had the septet as a filler to the Carnival of the Animals, and I put it on, and it was like, wow, that's really cool. Nifty stuff, absolutely wonderful. And after Saint-Saëns, well, Martinu, his Nonet. This is the only Nonet in this list. It's a late work from the 50s, just a year or two before Martinu died. It's so beautiful. It's imbued with that wonderfully enlivening rhythmic freshness that characterizes all of his music, the syncopated rhythms, but, the spirit of Czech folk music, because by then he was, towards the end of his life, and he was homesick, and it has moments of such touching beauty. It's exquisite and absolutely wonderful work. It's only about 15 minutes long in 3 movements, maybe a little bit longer. There aren't that many recordings of it. The one I learned the piece from was on Hyperion with, what was it, the Dartington Ensemble, I think, or some group like that. It was a Martinu disc, and wow, I listened to it and just went, where has this been all my life? It's one of those pieces. It doesn't get played because of the strangeness of the ensemble, because nonets are not regularly constituted ensembles. But boy, oh boy, is it a great work. And last but not least, Varèse, ionization. See, this is as far as I'm willing to go. It's for 13 percussionists or 12 percussionists and a piano. It's like 13 players. You can add or subtract depending on how versatile they are, how many hands they have. I mean, if you've got a percussionist with like a couple extra hands coming out of his shoulders or something, then you can, make do with fewer performers. But, oh, well, what can I say? It's only 6 minutes long, and it just chirps and pops. And, as my mother said in the Mother's Day video, she looked at me and said, oh, you always like noisy things. Well, yes, and that's definitely one of them. It has no pitched instruments until the very end, when you've got some tubular bells and some piano chord clusters and things that pop in and you get actual notes. Otherwise, it's nothing but rhythm and sonority. And oh my God, what a masterpiece. Amazing oodles of fun, and just full of fascinating sounds and timbres. So there you have it, my friends. 16 chamber works for 4 or more players that I couldn't live without. Not a bit, and no string quartets. I'm looking forward to seeing your lists as well, because there's a lot of stuff I haven't talked about. And I think that there's lots of room to show our viewers the amazing range of great works for mixed ensembles or larger chamber ensembles, because there's so much of it. But, they're one-off pieces by and large. So think hard and put together a list that really represents the music that you love, that you not something strange that nobody mentioned or something that's not on my list just because it's not on my list. It's music that you really will go to the mat for. That's what we want, because there's tons of it here. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.